and in a competitive market, it's a bit like going for a job interview.
Yeah.
The best prepared and the best presented are the people that build a rapport with their interviewer are the people that ultimately will stand the best chance.
That's respect for the property on the viewing. A good sign for me is always somebody saying, can I take my shoes off, or should I take my shoes off? That's such a good thing to say.
Yeah.
It says so much about that individual if they actually think it, let alone do it.
Like you say, there are too many people looking for not enough properties. Welcome to the All Things Property podcast with me, Simon Bacon of Preferential Properties. Every week, Ian Sadler and I will delve into all things property. We'll guide you through with friendly, no-nonsense advice.
Hello again, Ian. Good morning, Simon.
Welcome to another episode of All Things Property podcast. And today we're going to talk about an issue which could be contentious, but I think will be of real interest to people given where we are at in the rental market. We're going to be talking about how an applicant can stand out in a crowded market. Now, as we all know, for every single property that we put on the market, we get inundated with inquiries. So let's talk about let's try and give some advice really to prospective tenants and an understanding to landlords what it's like when you put a property on the market to try and find the ideal tenant. So, Ian, how many, on average, when you put a property on the market, how many applications or inquiries, let's start with inquiries first, how many inquiries would you generally get?
Upwards of 20 to 30 maybe.
Yeah, I would agree. I think sometimes, for really popular property, you can get, 30 or 40 inquiries, the phone rings, the emails coming through the CRM system. It's hard work trying to take all of those inquiries.
At some point, you have to make a decision to take the property offline, but then explain to tenants when you call them to find out their circumstances that, yes, it's been taken offline, but that's because I've had so many applications and inquiries, but it's still available. I'm just going through the process.
Yeah, absolutely. We do exactly the same. What we often find is you can put the property on the market in the morning, and by late afternoon, you're taking the property off the market to deal with the volume of inquiries that you've got. I think there are also some, lessons to be learned as well as letting agents. Gosh, been doing this for, 20 odd years. In terms of the real change has been the speed at which the inquiries come in. So, that's something really that and I think one of the questions I often get asked when I'm at viewings is, because people at viewings see other people coming in and standing outside waiting to come in, and they say, well, how are you going to make a decision as to, to choose an applicant? So what are the kind of things that you would do?
I have been known on occasions to pass the buck. And yes.
Okay. In what way?
Well, if I get, I'll normally arrange about 7 or 8 viewings on a property out of all the inquiries I've got. That can be because the tenants can't come on a specific day. It's difficult to dovetail all those. But I sometimes will say that thanks for your interest. So I've got all the details I need at this stage, and I'm going to submit them to the landlord, and he'll be making a decision over the weekend.
And when the landlord's making that decision, or you're discussing the applications with the landlord, what are the kind of questions that a landlord might ask?
Why are they renting? What are their circumstances? How long do they want to rent for? What are their employments? What's their employment status? Inevitable questions about smokers. Pets, I don't have a problem with pets. For me, it's more about the owners than the pets. Those sort of basic questions, really. And maybe what did you feel? What's your opinion?
Are there things you look out for when you're conducting your viewing?
Not specific. So I'd like to interact with the tenant, find out a bit about them. At the end of the day, if they take the tenancy, I'm going to be dealing with them for a minimum of 6 months, potentially 2 or 3 years. I want to be comfortable dealing with them and know that they will be comfortable dealing with me. So there has to be an interaction between me and any tenant for both to feel comfortable.
It's building a relationship.
Yeah, exactly that. It's not do you smoke, do you have pets, how many children do you have, do you have any categorical judgments. It's getting a general feel of the situation.
And I think, from my perspective, that's something that, I hear it all the time. If you speak to other agents, either sometimes in the office, it's like, in order, when you get an inquiry, you have to do a level of qualification to make sure that the person inquiring meets certain basic criteria. There's no point showing somebody around a 2-bedroom apartment if it's, there's 2 adults and 4 children or 3 children. It won't work. So,
No.
With any property, there are going to be limitations in terms of, the head lease may prevent pets. The head lease may, you may know that, in your experience, you've had, neighbour issues that are beyond the control of the prospective tenant. We've had situations where, neighbours in flats have complained previous tenants because, you've got wooden floors and they've had young children in the property and there's been a lot of noise on the floor. And I often say to people, if this is you, so for example, if you know the background to a property, and you know the neighbourhood, and you know that it's, I can think of certain locations where the other occupiers in a block of flats are perhaps elderly or, sensitivity to noise is an issue. I will often say to people, look, if you are somebody who has, parties, lots of friends coming round, you drink late into the night, you like your music playing quite loudly, then this property is not going to be for you. And it's better to have that honest conversation with them.
It is, but that's bound to be contentious.
Yes.
In an ideal world, yes, I agree with you. You've got one person or 2 people looking at a property, but if you've got 10 people looking at a property, and there's not a limitless supply of properties out there, so tenants are not desperate but extremely keen to secure a property.
Yeah.
So they will say, well, I will moderate my music.
And that's fine. And that's absolutely fine. What I'm saying is, I don't think it should just be us as letting agents or landlords saying, oh, this is the kind of tenant that I want. You have to be fair and reasonable to the potential applicants as well and say to them, look, I know the background to this property. I know the environment within which you are going to be coming in. So this is the kind of things that have caused problems here in the past. Because, and if you're up front with the tenant and they say, well, no, that's fine, I will be mindful of that and I will, moderate my behaviour to ensure that I fit in as much to the environment as the environment fits in with me. Isn't that being fair and reasonable?
Yeah, in an ideal world it is. But can you, how do you say no to a tenant that then says, I don't make any noise, I'll make sure the children don't run on the floor. I think that's really, really difficult, and in this market, it's even more difficult because there are just not enough properties around. For me, I'd go back to the point that I would far rather be able to establish a relationship, albeit a brief one, with a tenant, knowing that I'm going to be looking after them and they're going to be in that property for a long time, potentially.
Which is why the viewing is probably the most important part of the whole application process.
To generalise that, sorry to interrupt, to generalise that, the impression a tenant gives of them and their family at that interview, that viewing is so important.
But I know it's a slip, but actually a viewing is, to a certain extent, an interview. And it is a case that, applicants need to put their best foot forward, but it's engagement. The more you engage with someone, and the more you learn about them and their circumstances and why they're looking and what their background is, that all goes to help when going through the applications with the landlord. The more you can explain to a landlord, well, yes, this person met with them, this is their circumstances, this is why they're looking to rent, this is how long they've been in their existing property, this is the makeup of the family, this is how many people are going to be living there. That all goes towards helping a landlord make a decision as to, who they want to go with. Because, again, we've talked in previous episodes about the subjective nature of deposits and the subjective nature of, identifying issues. But choosing an applicant has an element of subjectivity, because in order to pass referencing, there are basic criteria that any referencing company will take into account, and that is affordability, adverse credit history. They're the two fundamental ones, and previous landlord references. So, and the majority of applicants that we get meet all of those criteria. So how do you then choose, if you've got 5 people who apply for property who all meet the affordability criteria, all meet the landlord criteria, all meet the employment affordability criteria, how do you then make a decision without someone saying to you, well, you've been unfair to me?
Well, you have to answer the question. It's most of the times I won't wait to be asked that question. I'll give them an explanation of circumstances and said that I've had over 40 inquiries of this property. I've managed to arrange 8 viewings today. It's no reflection on you as an individual if you don't get the property or you do get the property. The current market is such that there are simply not enough properties to go around. So it's too many tenants looking for too few properties. And at the end of the day, it is a little bit like a lottery. Now, the fact that you're here and I'm showing you around the property, you're suitable, but it can be a bit of a lottery.
And it on the flip side to that, it must be very demoralising for applicants, someone looking to rent a property, if the agent isn't upfront and honest with them, because, like you say, there are too many people looking for not enough properties, and it must be incredibly demoralising to phone up and be told, I'm sorry, we can't offer you a viewing, or you go to a viewing and you see 6 or 7 other people outside the property waiting to go in. You're thinking to yourself, I know lots of tenants think to themselves, really, what have I got to do to secure this property for my family?
I'll give you an example of. I don't agree with a lot of the ways a lot of letting agents conduct viewings. Excuse me. They'll have preconceived ideas about no benefits, no single parents, no smokers, no pets. It's a perfect example of why I like to talk to people to get a feel for them. There was a tenant, a single mum, nice lady, with a 10-year-old son, and we got on quite well, and I felt she was would be a responsible tenant. And she told me a story that shoved from pillar to post and not even got to a viewing by an agent because she felt that they were not allowing her to view properties because she was a single mother. And I felt she was a potential good tenant. And the reaction I got from her when I said, "Are you happy to proceed with the property?" it was just quite. She got quite emotional because she finally found somebody that would judge a tenant on their personality and the way it was felt they would conduct themselves rather than just their status.
And that's, I suppose sometimes that's what makes the job so rewarding.
Yes, absolutely.
You are in a position and you can see it. I see it when I phone people up, say, put the applications to the landlord and the landlord would like to proceed with your application. Sometimes there is just the joy and the relief that those people feel when they're told, do you know what? Yes, But
that's indicative of the current market status. But it's ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely.
They shouldn't provoke that kind of reaction.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are the other kind of things that you look at on a viewing then?
Apart from establishing a relationship with a tenant?
What are some of the no-nos? What are the things that, dare I say it, turn you off?
Well, I'll give you one example of many, maybe. A recent place up in Crewe, nice 2-bedroom place. The tenant, there were 6 viewings and 5 of the 6 wanted the property. And the last viewing I had, the tenant said to me, "The rent's a bit high. Can I ask you to ask the landlord to reduce the rent, or if you'd accept a reduced rent?" And for me, that was not a red flag, but it's. I had to explain to him that the current marketplace, that I could ask the landlord, but there is absolutely no way he would consider reducing the rent, and that's going to discount them immediately because the 5 other people want to have it.
It is about, I do find it astonishing sometimes with some of the questions that I get asked, even before someone even views the property. So, we've had occasions very similar to that. People are phoning up at inquiry stage and saying, "You've got property on the market at £900. Will the landlord take less?" And at that point you think, well,
Market forces.
Yeah, market forces. And if is it wrong to make a judgment of, well, if you're challenging the rent before you've even looked at the property, are you going to be a tenant that we can have a healthy relationship with? That doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to ask or challenge, but there is a timing for that, surely, isn't there?
It's difficult.
So I think, trying to understand from a tenant's perspective and an applicant's perspective, what are the kind of things that they can do to assist them in the application process? What are the kind of things you look for?
Respect for the property on the viewing. A good sign for me is always somebody saying, "Can I take my shoes off?" or "Should I take my shoes off?" That's such a good thing to say.
Yeah.
It says so much about that individual that they actually think it, let alone do it.
Yeah.
And they respect the property while they're walking around it. Ask questions politely without being too demanding. So just not doing anything that would stop that impression of them as applicants being favourable.
Do you get many where they bring other people with them to get opinion, or?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
How do you find that?
It's awkward because you can be nothing but polite during an interview. But pointing out potential problems with the property and being ultra negative about a property while you're walking around as the person accompanying the prospective tenant is a real no-no.
So what other things do you look for?
Not much more than that, really. Respect for the property and politeness and prepared to engage with the agent.
Speed of response, speed of getting stuff done, because obviously there's lots of information that we need to obtain as part of the application process, right to rent checks, passports, filling out the online forms with the referencing company, chasing up landlords, chasing up employer references. Again, how do you...
I think you have to give them a deadline of 24 hours to respond with the information you need. If they don't do that, then either they're not going to proceed or they're not serious about the property. You can't delay it 7 days because then you might potentially lose other people who are interested at the time.
No, absolutely. Okay. So therefore, in terms of just... summing up really what tenants can do to, or applicants can do to put their best foot forward and give themselves the best chance.
Put themselves in the place of the landlord. Imagine they were the landlord and somebody was coming to look at their property, and imagine what they would want to see from that prospective tenant.
Good communication.
Yeah, absolutely. Interaction.
If you're going to be a bit late for viewing, phone up and let them know you're running a bit late.
A day late, yeah.
That's something that I find quite frustrating. If you've got viewing scheduled and someone turns up 20 minutes late and they haven't made any contact with the office or communicated
I think it's really sad, but because of circumstances, prospective tenants have to basically go that extra mile at a viewing, which would be a problem solved if we had more properties available.
Yeah, absolutely. It's engagement, it's good communication, it's dealing with information promptly, being honest, being transparent. They're all the things that prospective tenants can do to aid their application going forward and give themselves the best chance. But, from my perspective, it's build a relationship with that applicant. So when they phone, how they're dealt with, how they deal with you, how they conduct themselves at the viewing, and how they conduct themselves after the viewing with completing the online application forms and that sort of stuff, all go to build a picture up. And in a competitive market, it's a bit like going for a job interview.
Yeah.
The best prepared and the best presented are the people that build a rapport with their interviewer are the people that ultimately will stand the best chance.
That's a perfect analogy, actually, a job interview.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunately what it is.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, on that note, I think we can probably
wrap it up.
So thank you very much, Ian.
You're more than welcome.
And if you would like to talk to us about your property needs, or want a valuation, or want to talk about renting your property out, please give us a call. Thank you for listening. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the All Things Property podcast. If you found this episode useful, don't forget to subscribe, like and share. These things really help us reach the people who need to hear this advice. See you next week.